Good morning, welcome. Today I want to talk about Jetpack, but not sort of the usual thing you hear about Jetpack at WordCamps. Most specifically extending and hacking and doing some really cool stuff with Jetpack as a developer, right? There's a lot of talk that Jetpack's not great for developers, right? But I want to kind of change that view. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the hacks that I've done in the past. First, to introduce myself, as she said, I'm Rich Collier. I work at Automatic. I am on the Jetpack Pit Crew team. So we're the team that sort of handles the plugin itself, right? There are a few other Jetpack teams that work on different things. But we handle the plugin itself and sort of the APIs. So prior to being at Automatic, I worked for a major publisher in the US. And I led the team that built the code and the infrastructure and really the strategy that supported tens to hundreds of millions of page views per day across our network of media sites. And all on WordPress, all on Jetpack. It scaled very well. So I live in Florida with my wife and my two very energetic boys. And when I'm not coding, I like to get out and do a little fishing on the Atlantic. And I do a little travel writing. So by a show of hands, who is familiar with Jetpack and who uses Jetpack? Wow, that's a lot of hands. That's great. Good to see. So for those who are not really familiar with Jetpack, our primary goal has sort of been to provide feature parity for your self-hosted site with WordPress.com. Why would we want to do that? Well, we have a lot of users that set up a great site on WordPress.com and build a great product and publish a lot of information, and then they find that they're limited. They can't do something. They can't install a plugin or do some specific thing that they have to use a self-hosted install to do. So they move to a self-hosted site, but they're missing all the features that they're used to on WordPress.com. Now this isn't actually a very common scenario. It happens often. So what we did is we took all the most popular features of WordPress.com and put them in a plugin for self-hosted users, and that's Jetpack. Most of those features require some sort of infrastructure that a lot of your hosts can't do. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but one of the key things about Jetpack is it connects your self-hosted site back into the WordPress.com cloud to provide those services that you can't necessarily do on your own. So some of the most popular features of Jetpack, right? You got Photon, which is a free global image CDN. It's the same CDN that serves all of the WordPress.com assets. It's a really great product. Jetpack Stats, which is a pretty robust analytics engine. You have Publicize for easy sharing to all your social networks. You have brute force protection from Jetpack Protect, and a bunch of other stuff that I just don't have time to talk about. So let's get into the fun stuff. We spend a lot of time at Jetpack making sure that's extendable and customizable for all of you. And we put a lot of useful actions, filters, constants, these things in the code so that you can take advantage of them and you can do additional things with your Jetpack site. So last I checked, we had roughly 650 filters and just over 300 actions. Right, and these numbers aren't perfect, right, because some of them are repeated, some of them are duplicated from WordPress core, but it should give you an idea of the lengths that we go to provide that customization. So, for example, if you want to run Jetpack on a staging site, right, it's essentially the same site as your production site, but it's not connected in the same way into WordPress.com, right? WordPress.com might get a little confused if you have two sites with the same API keys and whatnot with two different URLs that are connected to it. So we put this filter in. It's Jetpack staging mode, set it to true, and that'll fix you right up. You'll not have any more problems if you've ever experienced this in the past. You won't have any more problems with what we call identity crisis. Your staging site will pretty much act normal. There are a few things that you can't necessarily enable. But yeah, it'll give you a good grounds for a staging site. So another one is Jetpack Dev Debug. And forgive me, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. I have a large presentation and not a lot of time. So all this will be online, and I'll be at the Jetpack booth all day. So come see me if you have questions. But another useful one, this is for if you have more of a local site like VVV or a local host installed that can't connect outward. then you'll want to use Jetpack Dev Debug. So as I said earlier, one of the most popular features of Jetpack is the Photon module. You activate it, and all of your featured images and your post content images will be served from the WordPress.com API. And that's a great feature, right? For free, you can't beat that. I tell everybody that uses Jetpack, turn this on. There's no harm done. If nothing else, this makes Jetpack worth it. But by default, Photon only does those featured images, and it only does the post content images. So a lot of themes are image heavy. A lot of plugins bring in assets. Photon will not load those from the CDN. So how do we do that? So take, for example, this is just sort of a basic thing that's done pretty frequently in a theme or a plugin. You have an image URL assigned to a variable, and you're just echoing it out in an image tag, right? How do we Photon that? It's a simple filter. Apply filters, Jetpack Photon URL, and now that image will be served from Jetpack's Photon API through the WordPress.com CDN. It's very simple, but this could get a little cumbersome if you have a lot of images that you need to load from your theme or your plugin. So there are a few ways around that. Come see me if you want to see one of those ways. One way that you can do it is with OB start, OB and clean, that type of thing, and run that on shutdown, and you can just catch every image that doesn't already match a Photon image. There's a couple ways to do that, though. So another one of my favorite features of Jetpack is related posts, right? You turn it on, your site gets indexed by the WordPress.com Elasticsearch API, and then you can provide related posts below your below each post content. If you're not familiar with Elasticsearch, it's great server infrastructure for sort of creating an index of what documents can relate to one another. I won't go into the details of that too much. Let's just say the goal of this is to keep visitors on your site a little bit longer. So it inserts links of posts that have related topics, and it has some magic internally that figures out what is related to what. I can't claim to know all the details. But this is what it looks like on the 2017 theme, right? There are a few display options. You can make this look a little bit better. For the most part, it's turnkey. You click a button, you get related posts. As a developer, what do we want to do to make that a little bit better, right? Well, why would we? First, writing a WP query or even a very complicated algorithm to do related posts, and there are a few plugins that do a pretty good job of this, but it's a very difficult, very complicated thing to get that relational hierarchy. And it just won't scale, right? If you have a site with a lot of traffic, or if you're doing some sort of specialty things, it just doesn't scale to do it this way. It's a bit like cryptography, right? You can do it yourself, but it's really not recommended. So we have related posts. It uses Elasticsearch. It does a great job of it. So this isn't bad, right? But I like custom, and so do you. So let's customize this a little bit. You get a few options with the WordPress customizer, but like I said, they're very limited. What if you wanted to move your related posts down the page? What if you wanted to put it below your comments, perhaps onto the sidebar? What if you wanted to do something like this? This is actually my own personal fishing blog. It's femahi.com. The theme is from WordPress.org. It's called Hitchcock. It's a pretty nice theme for photo bloggers. On the article pages, after your comments, it shows its own 3 related posts. Well, that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to use Jetpack related posts to bring in Jetpack suggestions there. So how do we do that? So again, this is going to get a little complicated. Stay with me. The first thing we need to do is remove the related posts that are filtered into the content, right? And I'll just kind of go through this line by line really quick. You want to remove what we put there by default, right? So you're just doing a remove filter. You're hooking it into WP at the same priority. You can grep through the Jetpack code base and find where this is inserted and just reverse it. That's all you're doing here. Now we need to run our own query, right? This is the way that Jetpack does it. This is basically a wrapper function that hits the WordPress.com API and gets a list of these posts back. I suggest wrapping this in your own function to make things a little neater, a little more organized. Basically, you just call Jetpack related post class, init raw, give it a query name. and then run the getForPostID method, and you pass it a couple little basic things, and then you will get an array back with some data. This can and sometimes does give you a lot of data back, so get familiar with var dump. I'm sure you're all already there. Don't forget to validate your responses. Make sure you get back what you're supposed to get back. I don't think I've ever seen it fail, but the possibility is there. So make sure you check that your response is an array. Make sure that you check that it's not an empty array. And lastly, again, if you're wrapping this in a function, you could do this a variety of ways, right? My favorite is just a raywalk. That means you're pulling out those IDs from this multi-dimensional array and giving them back. And then you have an array of very highly related posts. So usually what I do is pass those to a WP query with post in, and done. And you get something beautiful like this. But you can do this anywhere you want, on the sidebar, below the content, above the content. The sky's the limit. So there's a number of other manipulations you can do here. Unfortunately, they're not super well documented, but part of the purpose of this talk is to inspire you to dig in and start hacking on things on your own. So dig into the Jetpack code base. I'll have more details on that in just a moment. Yeah, just dive in and see what you can do. So here's another fun related post hack that I have used in the past. Say you want to inject a specific post into those related post results. Say you're trying to promote a specific post on your site. So how do we do that? There's a filter for it, Jetpack related post filter hits. Grab it, filter in. You got to pull. You need to return the exact same number of results that it has. It's a weird thing, but it's the way it is. So pop one of those results off, insert your own result, and return it, and you're good. You've just put your own result into there. You could read this from a theme option, or, again, the sky's the limit. So now let's really quick talk about Jetpack stats. This is one of our more popular features. Folks love it. It's the same stats that you get on WordPress.com if you have a WordPress.com site. It's a great way to keep an eye on your site's traffic. It keeps track of page views, unique visitors, top posts, likes, comments, and a horde of other metrics. You get a basic view right on your site's Jetpack dashboard, and then if you continue on to the WordPress.com stats, you get even more depth of data. So this is a basic WordPress.com view that shows the primary metrics that most folks are interested in, right? That's basically what it does out of the box. But with a little ingenuity, you can use this data to do some other very powerful things. So things to keep in mind. This is not Google Analytics, but it's pretty close, and it's a heck of a lot easier to work with. All of the data that is accessible to your site is provided by the WordPress.com API. So that means you can do some pretty advanced queries for data outside of those Jetpack wrapper functions. But the quick and easy way to get most data is through the stats get from REST API function. This is going to give you back a ton of data. Essentially, all of the aggregated data we have for your site will come back from this function. So again, get familiar with var dump, spit it out, play with it on a staging site, and pull out what you need and use it in any number of ways. This particular query will return the top posts for your sites based on today only. It's useful for populating widgets and other things. If you want to get really crafty, you could combine this with the related post hack and do some really cool stuff to promote like the best content on your site that is slightly related to what the users are looking for. You would need a pretty big site for that to make sense, but it does work. So pass this function an empty array. That array is pretty much empty for everything that you use this function for. And then the second argument here is essentially the WordPress.com API endpoint that you're hitting. So it can be useful for other things too. If you look through the WordPress.com API documentation, you'll see a lot of things use this exact same thing. Again, pull this out, play with it on a staging site, and get what you need. Same thing here, right? Except you're grabbing data based on a whole week, a whole month, a whole year. This will give you all the stats for a single post ID. Again, it will return a lot of data, so be prepared to poke through it. So another feature of Jetpack that I love is video press, right? So WordPress core, or rather really the server infrastructure that WordPress runs on, doesn't handle videos very well. It doesn't handle uploads, doesn't handle downloads very well. So VideoPress solves that through Jetpack. It adds an awesome native video to your Jetpack site. They can be uploaded just like images and other media, and they're hosted on WordPress.com. So again, what if you want to grab the poster image for a video? Again, I suggest wrapping this in a function that you can pass in that VideoPress GUID, and it will return the poster URL. Make sure that you check that the class exists. You don't want to disable Jetpack and crash your site. That has happened. Just really quick, create a VideoPress video instance. Make sure that it's not null. Make sure that it has the poster frame URI property, and then return the escaped URL, and then you've got your poster. Lastly, let's hack Jetpack Carousel really quick. If you're not familiar with this, I love this feature also. It provides a great looking, great functioning photo slider. It looks something like this. You get a caption, description, photo metadata, comments, all in a nice JavaScript powered interface. This is great for photos, but what if you wanted to publish a slide deck like this one on your blog? What if you wanted to hide the metadata in comments? So this is exactly how I'm going to publish these slides. So it's hard to tell from the screenshot here, but if you notice at the bottom, there's no more comments. See how there's a metadata on the right side? And there would be comments below this. This just removes them. It's just a little bit of CSS. Again, I'll have this all published if you want to go back and look through it. A little CSS to hide some things, and you're done. You've got your custom carousel. So you also may want to remove those comments from the back end as well. You can do that as well. Just shut down attachment. Just shut down comments on attachments. It's fairly straightforward. All right, so that's pretty much it for my hacks. But where do you go from here if you need more information? Again, the main point of this talk has not been specific hacks. It's that these hacks are out there. Go look for them. Go write them yourself. And you can do some really, really cool stuff with Jetpack. So our Jetpack developer site is at developer.jetpack.com. It has a ton of documentation on the hooks, filters, constants, actions, everything, and some useful hacks that I haven't talked about here, plus beta testing, bug reporting, other assets like that. The WordPress.com API is developer.wordpress.com/docs/API. It's one of the best documented APIs I have ever come across, and I'm not just saying that because I work there. It really is. Very useful information there. Comes with a nice looking API console like Google's. It works really well. And lastly, we actually develop and build Jetpack publicly. We do all of our work on GitHub, and you can follow along with what's coming up on the next release, submit issues, even submit pull requests. Like WordPress core, we're fully open source. We invite contributions from the community. And you folks in this room here, you're very much invited to submit issues, to submit pull requests as you see fit. This is your product too. So we love that. We love our community. And again, all that works right there on GitHub. So follow along, join us. And a quick plug, Automatic is always hiring. So if you've ever dreamed of traveling the world and writing really cool software that reach a lot of people, maybe give us a shot, automatic.com. And that's it. So thank you. Thank you.